Excuse me, can I ask you a few questions about climate change? Excuse me, can I ask a few questions about climate change?
Yes.
Excuse me, can I please ask a few questions about climate change? Yes. How do you feel about climate change?
Climate change is a serious crisis that we are facing today, most especially in our country. We had a typhoon that struck our country really bad. So it's really a serious case that we have to solve na, kasi kung hindi, lalala lang siya ng lalala.
Yes.
I feel sad about climate change.
Yeah, I think it's really intoxicating everything that we have right now. Can you please describe climate change in one word?
Decline.
Declining.
Heat wave.
Heat wave.
Scary.
Scary. Thank you.
Sudden change in temperature.
Thank you. Sudden change in temperature.
Burning of fossil fuel.
Thank you.
Sudden change in weather.
So, what do you think is the most affected sector of climate change in the Philippines?
Marine and fisheries.
Marine and fisheries, agriculture,
The natural biodiversity.
natural biodiversity, agriculture,
Economy.
Animal biodiversity.
Vulnerable people kasi wala silang means to protect themselves and to strengthen their homes about climate and especially pag may typhoon kapag kunyari yung yero nalilipat ganun, maraming instance ganun sa Philippines.
Yung mga impoverished areas kasi hirap na nga sila with their lifestyle, with their living conditions. Tapos pag dinaman pa sila ng calamity like a typhoon, hindi sila basta-basta makaka-recuperate because they do not have enough funds to recover what they lost.
our land and agriculture and our seas, everything is affected now because of climate change because it has gone so long that it has continued to affect and intoxicate and destroy everything that we have. So, what do you think are the steps that we could take to mitigate the effects of climate change?
We really have to have a better government, better administration, better fund allocation, and of course, really have to listen to scientists, to professionals.
What I can do about it is to share awareness. For example, like sharing posts online about the environment, reduce, reuse, recycle, little ways like that.
We have to take consideration of research, of studies na nag-a-address dito. Hindi pwedeng tayo-tayo lang na kung ano rin nakikita natin because we don't see a lot of things. So really have to take to consider all sides para magkaroon tayo ng magandang solution sa climate crisis natin.
Yes, I think it's very important to practice waste segregation. Even if we're just students, like picking up trash from sidewalks or anything like that, it's really helpful in our own.
Save energy ako.
Thank you.
Have a good mindset.
Proper government planning. Environmental awareness.
Research and study more about the environment and how to help it.
Oh, alam ko ba?
R.
Citizen science ship. Science, citizenship. Ano?
Citizen
Science.
Citizen science.
Thank you so much for your answers. Have a nice day.
Ivan Andres. I'm the Deputy Head of Research and Policy for the Center for Energy, Ecology, and Development. Background of my profession, I guess I'll give a background of my organization. So SEED is a think-do institution, and we conduct research and policy, and we partner with communities to push for an ecologically just and people-centered energy sector and development path. So we're a civil society organization, non-government organization. We're non-profit, and we strive to push for these advocacies, and we, like I mentioned, we partner with different communities and as well as different organizations pushing for similar advocacies. Yeah, I've been working in the environmental sector for about 4 years now. Climate change is the very rapid and unusual, we could say, out of the ordinary increase or decrease of temperature, global temperature. In our movement, we call it a climate crisis. We call it climate crisis because it merits because of the immediate danger that we're seeing. It merits immediate response from our governance, as well as pooled response or collective response coming from all nations in the world. The reason for climate change, the reason for global warming are anthropogenic activities or human-induced activities. So everywhere you look, if you start now and anywhere you look, that's human activity. So from our cars, from the transport sector, from the commercial industries, from the power plants that we build, from even in our very own households where we use fossil fuels for cooking. All of these activities created by us, anthropogenic activities, release a certain amount of emissions. And these emissions are contribute to what we call the global warming effect or the greenhouse effect, which traps the heat into in our atmosphere, creating for a rise of temperature globally.
What devices or technology
To name a few of the devices or ways to mitigate the emissions, for power plants, they have electrostatic precipitators. They have sulfur absorbers, scrub at or take away from the emissions and reduce the emissions being released in the atmosphere. For the power sector, we can look at renewable energy. So renewable energy, as opposed to fossil fuels, do not emit greenhouse gas emissions, as well as they don't use fossil fuels. So definitely, if we were to transition into a renewable energy dependent power sector, then we could see a very rapid and drastic decline in greenhouse gas emissions. For the transport sector, of course, we're developing the electronic vehicles. So much like renewable energies, if a automobile is not using fossil fuels like oil, gas, and diesel, then it would not emit greenhouse gas emissions.
What is your stance or perspective on the urgency?
We should be doing utmost effort, especially in part for the national government, to do the best that we can as a country to mitigate the climate crisis. If we see through a future where it's reliant on renewable energy, if we see through a future that is less carbon intensive, less carbon footprint, then definitely we can do our part in order to reduce the contribution of our country to the climate crisis.
Joseph Fourier, a French mathematician in the 1820s, proposed that energy reaching the planet must be balanced by releasing energy into space. The energy that we receive is from the sun, and the idea behind this theory would be that heated surfaces would emit radiation. However, he reasoned that some of the energy must be held within the atmosphere in order to keep the Earth warm. He proposed that there is a thin layer of air, the atmosphere, that acts similarly to a glass greenhouse. The theory was then explored by Eunice Newton Foote in the 1850s. Foote experimented with glass cylinders to demonstrate the heating effect of the sun being greater in moist air than in dry air. While experimenting, she detected the highest degree of heating occurred in a cylinder containing carbon dioxide. With that, John Tyndall explored other gases that play a huge role in absorbing that.
Understanding the works of Fourier, Foote, and Tyndall led to a better understanding of greenhouse gases and their effects on the Earth's atmosphere. Climate change is the shift of temperatures and weather patterns that may occur naturally. However, according to the United Nations, human activities have been the leading cause of climate change since the 1800s. These changes occur in the long run and have since snowballed into various issues affecting the Earth and our natural environment. One of the biggest contributors to climate change is greenhouse gas emissions caused by burning fossil fuels like coal, oil, and gas.
With the United Nations establishing the Sustainable Development Goals in 2015, there are 17 environmental and societal issues that are to be addressed and accomplished by its members by 2030. One of the global issues to be addressed would be the climate action, or SDG 13. Through the years, research suggests that the Earth's temperature has been constantly rising in small increments. To have the UN bring into focus climate action, it is without a doubt that every rise in temperature matters, as each rise affects everyone in different ways. In 2020, we face a temporary reduction of CO2 emissions due to the pandemic. However, a rise of 6.0% in CO2 emissions occurred due to the global demand for coal, oil, and gas that rebounded with the economy by 2021. With the current national commitment, global emissions are expected to increase by 14% by the end of the decade. This projection would in fact lead to a climate catastrophe if private and public sectors do not address the issue seriously. As of 2022, climate change has wreaked various effects on our environment. However, despite the ever so constant change, countries, both developing and developed, have pinpointed such issues and are starting to look for possible solutions and adapting technologies to help mitigate climate change. With the increase in global CO2 emissions, the proliferation of these greenhouse gases will continue to affect the environment significantly. Having trapped heat, certain parts of the globe experience heat waves. It comes with its own effects, such as wildfires that cause devastation to ecosystems and infrastructures and affect animal and human health. One of the most recent wildfires would be those that occurred in Europe. On July 17, 2022, the southernmost part of Europe had to control wildfires across Greece, France, and Spain. The aftermath of the wildfire caused hundreds of deaths, as scientists stated that the rise in temperature is consistent with climate change. In a European context, countries are fending off heat waves by establishing more green spaces to provide shade that would help alleviate heat absorption by roads and paved areas. Since then, Barcelona has approximately 1.4 million planted trees, which is more than any other city in Europe. Italy, on the other hand, is targeting to plant 3 million trees by 2030 as part of its Forestami initiative. Meanwhile, Austria's capital, Vienna, is creating a car-free or cool street to mitigate heat waves. These cool streets offer outdoor seating as well as cool mist sprays that dispense cool vapors of calm. Both solutions done by the aforementioned European countries help in mitigating heat waves, despite the solution being considered as simple by some people. However, with cityscaping providing more greenscapes or cool street neighborhoods help a certain area to be a more habitable to people without worrying about the detrimental effects of heat waves to one's health.
Another pressing issue found worldwide that is caused by climate change would be rising sea levels. Assuming that we miss the window to avoid catastrophe by 2100, sea levels will rise by 30 to 60 centimeters. The global average sea levels rose throughout the century and have changed in acceleration in recent years. When averaged from 1880 to 2013, the average rise would be 0.06 inches. Since 1993, however, the average sea level has risen at a rate of 0.12 to 0.14 inches per year, roughly twice as fast as the long-term trend. With the increase in sea levels over the years, the European Environment Agency stated, The potential impacts of sea level rise include flooding, coastal erosion, and the submergence of flat regions along continental coastlines and on islands. Countries have found ways to combat floods in order to protect their coasts from the detrimental effects of rising sea levels. For example, Netherlands' own Delta Works, southwest of the country, which is an engineering marvel built after the flood of 1953. This functions as a large-scale system with 13 sections, which includes dikes, a storm surge barrier, and dams. In the northeastern part of the Netherlands, they have collaborated with EcoShape to establish salt marshes to help mitigate rising sea levels and subsidence. Both of the solutions done by the Netherlands integrated science and technology in order to impose a better standard of city living on its citizens. The government understands the risks as well as the detrimental effects of flooding, and these solutions are the product of prepared and well-planned disaster risk management safety measures that would be a viable project in the long run. Although expensive, it is without a doubt that these solutions bear positive outcomes during times of calamity.
The Philippines is one of the countries most vulnerable to climate-related weather events. In a recent 2022 report titled International Public Opinion on Climate Change, Yale's program on climate change communication revealed that 85% of Filipinos express deep concerns about climate change, while 87% of Filipinos believe that such an environmental issue is a serious threat in the next 20 years. Furthermore, 82% of Filipinos personally perceive the problem of climate change as very important to extremely important, and 7 out of 10 Filipinos live every day with the knowledge that the consequences will be disastrous.
A warmer world will undoubtedly have an impact on the systems and sectors. However, the magnitude of the impact will be determined by factors such as sensitivity, exposure, and adaptive capacity to climate risk. In most cases, the likely consequences will be negative. Water stress, both in quantity and quality, is expected in areas and regions where rainfall is expected to decrease, which will mostly likely cascade into more negative impacts, particularly on forestry, agriculture and livelihood, health, and human settlement. Changes in rainfall regimes and patterns, which result in increased and decreased water use and temperature increases, may cause a shift in the forest ecosystem, especially in areas where rains are scarce and may no longer provide favorable conditions for certain highly sensitive species. Flooding events may occur in areas where rainfall is expected to be intense during wet periods, posing a risk to human settlements and infrastructure in the form of landslides and mudslides, particularly in geological landslides. Heavy daily rainfall will continue to increase and extreme rainfall will increase only in Luzon and Visayas, but the number of dry days will increase across the country in 2020 and 2050.
This viewpoint is strengthened by the fact that extreme weather events are the most visible manifestation of climate change, and Filipinos bore the brunt of them, as 8 of the top 10 costliest Philippine typhoons occurred in the last 10 years, from 2012 to 2021. The increase in greenhouse gas concentrations caused by human activities, such as the use of fossil fuels for energy, the emission of harmful gases from transportation used by cars, motorcycles, and airplanes, deforestation, and improper waste disposal is what causing the warming of the climate system. The rapid expansion of climate change poses major threats to man and the environment in the present and future. And these impacts are now unavoidable given the amount of greenhouse gases currently saturating our atmosphere as a result of previous decades of human activity. combined with the increased contribution of the next decade of urbanization.
This leads us to the plans of action taken by the Philippine government and the Filipino people in response to the presence of climate change and the manifested effects in our country, starting with the commitment of PAG-ASA and the Department of Science and Technology in taking steps to cope with changing climate conditions through mitigation and adaptation, which means reducing negative impacts and capitalizing on potential benefits. This is further empowered by the Climate Change Act of 2009, wherein it recognized the vulnerability of the Philippines to climate change and the need for appropriate adaptation.
It establishes a comprehensive framework for systematically incorporating the concept of climate change, in conjunction with disaster risk reduction at various stages of policy formation, development plans, poverty reduction techniques, and other development tools and strategies. The Act outlines the key principles of climate change policy, including shared but differentiated responsibilities, the precautionary principle, UNFCCC objectives, and the YOGO framework for action on disaster risk reduction. It takes a gender-sensitive, pro-child, and pro-poor stance.
In line with the establishment of the said Act, the National Climate Change Action Plan, or NCAP, came into fruition as the Philippine government's executive branch adopted this in November of 2011. This assesses the country's current climate change risk situation and outlines the NCAP's adaptation and mitigation agenda for 2011 to 2028 in response to the current situation and projected impact.
It also prioritizes food security, water sufficiency, ecosystem and environmental stability, human security, climate-smart services, sustainable energy, and capacity development as the direction for 2011 and 2028. The multi-sectoral processes carried out ensured that the concerns of various sectors were heard and taken into account to ensure maximum mitigation opportunities for long-term development.
Another is the formation of the Climate Change Commission, or CCC. They are in charge of developing key policy instruments that will lay the groundwork for a climate-resilient Philippines. Many of these policy instruments necessitate collaboration with relevant government agencies, resulting in the release of joint memorandum on budget tagging, natural ecosystem protection, capacity building of LGUs and other agencies, and even support for climate science research.
The CCC proceeds to monitor the progress of climate change action at the national level, producing documents such as the Monitoring and Evaluation Report and the National Greenhouse Gas Inventory. Furthermore, with the enhancement of the National Integrated Climate Change Database and Information Exchange System, the CCC has improved its monitoring capabilities on the tracking progress on climate change action with the NICTs. From sources and actors coming from both public and private sectors and other stakeholders, allowing for decision makers to access, distribute, and exchange these data for use in policy making, development planning, and investment decision making.